What's going on, guys? Welcome to a review on this channel. Shout out to everyone subscribing to the channel, liking the videos. I appreciate that. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the NBA playoffs, and I'm going to start by talking about day one of the playoffs. Cavaliers won 109-108 against Indiana. Then you had the Bucks winning 97-83 against the Raptors, and the Spurs winning 111-82 against the Grizzlies. And of course, you had the Utah Jazz winning 97-95 against the Clippers. So that was day one of the playoffs, and I would think that with most people talking about the Cavaliers, I was not impressed by the Cavaliers. And the reason why I wasn't that impressed by them is because the way the Cavaliers have been playing basketball, I would say for about half the season or more, not really that impressive at all. And some people are saying maybe a quarter of the season, but really if you go to half of the season or more, they're not playing consistent defense. And it's not that good for a team like that, especially if you won a championship last year. Now, the team cohesiveness is also an issue to me, because if you're blaming your teammates again for when you don't win, obviously, you're going to have an issue during the games. You know what? Last year, they weren't even that impressive at certain points in time either. Although that it does happen with teams, I'm saying in this year's playoffs, I don't really think they're that impressive. You know, and some people are going to say that LeBron James can play great basketball anytime he wants, but I will also have to say, going into the playoffs, you have to play your best basketball so you're ready for the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting with the Cavaliers. Again, there's no guarantees. Obviously, there's no guarantees because you had the Milwaukee Bucks winning 97-83 on the road in Game 1 of the playoffs. Now, again, some people are going to say, hey, the Bucks are a good team. They got guys that can ball. But for the first game, and Toronto's at home, I would have thought that the Raptors could have had a much better game than that. So I really wasn't impressed by the Raptors. So that's going to be another interesting series. You have the Spurs winning against the Grizzlies again. You know, the Spurs are an interesting team to a point because, like a lot of people say, their basketball style is not that interesting all the time. And for them to win 111-82, that was not an accident. They have a very good coach. They have a good system. They're going to win games, and they're going to be a competitive team in the Western Conference. Now, as far as the Clippers and the Jazz, you know, for some reason, I'm really not that surprised that the Clippers didn't win Game 1. I'm not saying they can't win the series. I'm just saying, as far as their team itself, they have a lot of issues. Again, if you want to talk about team cohesiveness, it doesn't seem like a real team to me where they can actually win a championship. They could still win the series. Anything's possible. But the way they are, I think they have a lot more changes they need to make with that team before they're even a competitive team for a championship. Now let's talk about the next day for the playoffs. You had the Hawks going against the Wizards. The Wizards won 114-107. You know, the Hawks can ball, but I don't really watch the Wizards that much. So for that series, I'm not going to say anything about the Wizards again because I don't really watch them. But as far as the Hawks, this was a close game, so it is going to be a competitive series. As far as the Blazers and the Warriors, you had the Warriors winning 121-109. I am going to be talking more about that, of course, because I'm rooting for the Warriors, like I said before. Then you had the Bulls going against the Celtics. The Bulls won 106-102. That was interesting because the Bulls were on the road. Game 1, you know, a lot of things going on with the Bulls has to do with them just getting into the playoffs. So right now, you know, they made the playoffs, in the last week of the regular season? You know, they have a chance to be one of the competitive teams in the Eastern Conference. It's just a matter of, do they win the games and are they able to get to that Eastern Conference Finals? Because a lot of people are also saying, what would happen with the Bulls going up against the Cavaliers? That would be very interesting, I would say. But, you know, the Bulls have to win their games for that to even happen. And of course, you also have another game with the Rockets versus OKC, and the Rockets won that game 118-87. I am not surprised by that at all, and the reason why is because the Rockets have a better team than OKC. I saw a lot of people saying things about Russell Westbrook and also who's the MVP, of course, because you have James Harden versus Russell Westbrook. You know, the regular season MVP is Russell Westbrook. He got all those triple-doubles. He is the MVP. If you compare both teams, though, like I was saying in the previous video also, you have the Rockets, who have a better system, better management. They have a better team. I'm not saying they're winning the championship. I'm not saying they're winning the Western Conference Finals. I'm not saying they're even getting out of the Western Conference because I'm rooting for the Warriors to get to the finals and win the NBA championship. But when you look at the Rockets versus OKC, the Rockets have the better team. And you can't blame Russell Westbrook for that. That has a lot to do with OKC's management. Once Durant went to the Warriors, OKC was not ready for this team to be a playoff team. I thought that was obvious. Most people that talk about these kind of things, they might be trashing one player or another. A lot of people like to trash Russell Westbrook because of his attitude, or they think that he's just stat padding. So he's not getting the appreciation all the time for what he accomplished during the regular season. When you compare these teams, you can't just say Russell Westbrook is the reason why OKC didn't win. He has a lot of teammates on that team that just are not as good as the Rockets. You know, and that's just how it is, because when you look at Beverly on the Rockets, for anyone else out there, and a lot of people were saying this last night, and I think they were just trying to trash Westbrook again by saying that Beverly was having a better game than Westbrook. Russell Westbrook balls in every game. It doesn't mean his team is going to win. It doesn't even mean that he's going to have the best game, but he's always trying to ball. He's always putting an effort into the game, and I think it matters when you compare teams. So I'm just saying that about Russell Westbrook. That's obvious to me, but I think the Rockets have the better team compared to OKC, and it's not Russell Westbrook's fault. I think the best situation for Russell Westbrook, if OKC can't build on this team to get it to be a competitive team in the playoffs, he has to go to another team. Just for his own career, because when you're a player at that level and you're one of the best in the NBA right now, you want to be on a competitive team. And there's other teams out there with better management, and I think Russell Westbrook really needs to consider that when looking at the situation with OKC. No offense to OKC, but once Durant again went to the Warriors, you have a team that's not ready for the playoffs. Could that change? Of course it could. It's sports. You can always get more people on your team. You can always trade for other guys for your team. You can make changes with management. You could do a lot of stuff. I think the situation, though, with OKC, if that doesn't change, Russell Westbrook, again, has to go to another team. Now, as far as the Warriors and the Blazers, what an interesting series this started to be, because you had the Blazers really being competitive in the game. You know, they were shooting the ball a lot, and that has a lot to do with what they see from the Warriors. I think they think if you can't compete with the Warriors from the perimeter, you're not going to win the game at all. That's the way it looks like to me, because with the Blazers, you see them shooting a lot from the perimeter. And I also thought it was interesting towards the end of the game when you see Durant involved with the offense, and he was really contributing. He was making a difference in the game. You also had Clark at some point in time adding offense to the team. Whether it's going to be Thompson, Curry, Durant, or even a guy like Clark, you have guys that can contribute to the offense, but you don't know who's going to be necessarily. You even had Draymond Green shooting from the perimeter, and he was getting points. Not only that, if Draymond is shooting from the perimeter, and he's also getting points in the paint, that's going to be really tough for any of the Blazers to go up against him. And then you look at Durant, and the fact that Durant can also drive the net. So you have a lot of guys on the Warriors that can drive the net, that can also shoot from the perimeter. It's probably going to get really complicated for the Blazers. And I also heard people saying that the Warriors should probably reconsider on how they're going against some of the guys on the Blazers. You know, the Blazers have some guys that can ball, not the entire team. So if you can isolate that defense, you could probably limit the amount of points that the Blazers are getting, because this was a lot of offense from the Blazers. I do not think it's going to be like this in every game, because this is a lot of points for both teams, by the way. The Warriors, they can get those kind of points, but I think the Warriors are capable defensively to limit the offense from the Blazers. That's the way I'm looking at it, because I think Steve Kerr is going to make even more changes. Most people, I think, would agree with that. I don't think the Warriors, even though they won, are happy with the fact that the Blazers got 109 points. So that's something that the Warriors can work on. As far as the series itself, you know, a lot of people are saying that Draymond Green was trash talking against the Blazers. That's basketball. I don't know how anyone would be even talking about that like that's original, because in every game there's players out there that are trash talking. So if you're going to talk about anything about Draymond Green in that game, it was the rebounding, it was him getting points in the paint and also shooting from the perimeter, it was him motivating his teammates. There's a lot of things that Draymond Green does. Trash talking to me is like, what else do you think is going on in the NBA when teams are competing against each other? I mean, seriously. So for anyone to be saying anything about that, to me, is ridiculous. But if you want to talk about it, go ahead and talk about it. I think people just try to stir up some kind of stuff to talk about, like drama, so they have something to say about the game. But if you want to talk about the game itself, it was one of his better games in the playoffs. Really was. Really impressive from Draymond Green. You also had Steph Curry shooting the ball ridiculously from the perimeter, of course, and also driving the net. So Steph was contributing to the offense. Durant looked really impressive in the game. You had McGee getting those rebounds and also getting some points in the paint. That was great. And again with Clark, you know, Clark was getting his perimeter shots. Clark was changing the game. When he was in the game, also Draymond, by the way, I think at one point in time, the Blazers were getting some points, and then Draymond goes back into the game. What happens? Draymond impacts the game again, and then goes back to the Warriors where they're winning the game. So I don't think that the Blazers were really prepared for that. And I also think when you compare coaching styles, you're going to see the Warriors adjust a lot better to the changes throughout the series than the Blazers could. And I think we saw that also during this game. So yes, it had a lot to do with the guys in the game, but also the coaching of Steve Kerr. Now, as far as any of the other series, of course, I got to talk about the Cavaliers series one more time, because when we're comparing teams, this is something I have been talking about. The Cavaliers do not look like a championship team. They look like a team that's not guaranteed to win any series. And I'm saying that because in the first round, for you guys to go against Indiana, and Indiana is not that impressive defensively either, you guys won that game only by 1 point. And I'm not saying every game is going to be like that, but for the first game of that series, you guys didn't look confident. Sometimes you guys look like you're trying to figure out ways to even lose the game. I mean, honestly, that's what you guys look like, because your defense is not impressive at all. These are the playoffs. You guys have played a lot of games, and I don't really think that you guys can compete with a championship level team. There's people out there even saying that if it was the Spurs versus the Cavs or even the Warriors versus the Cavs, they're really looking at other teams in the Western Conference now and saying, hey, those teams could also win against the Cavaliers. So if you're not playing great basketball right now, when are you going to change things? And I think the problem with LeBron James at some points in time has been him blaming his teammates. The team as a whole is not impressive. So that's not just about LeBron, and it's not just about one teammate or the other. It has a lot to do with the team. The Cavaliers, to me, I watched the game, not that impressive. As a Warriors fan, I am rooting for the Warriors, of course. And when I compare the Warriors, I'm saying they look like a much better team. And that's not just about Durant. They're playing much better defense. If you saw even Draymond Green, my gosh, if you've seen his blocks in that game, ridiculous. Getting back on defense, great defensively. And I think most people that watch the Warriors know Draymond Green has that capability, but a lot of other people like to ignore it. He is one of the best defenders in the NBA, if not the best. I would say he's the best. I don't know anyone else in the NBA right now that's better than him defensively. When he's in the paint, blocking shots, he's getting rebounds, he's one of the best. It's about effort, and it's also about playing team defense. The Warriors are looking like the best team in the NBA, and I'm saying that even against the Spurs, because if you remember that game against the Spurs in the regular season, when the Warriors didn't have Durant, I don't think that's a coincidence that they won that game. With Durant, I think the Warriors have far better offense than the Spurs. And I don't think people are talking about that yet, but you're going to see that because the Warriors have that great of a team that even though the Spurs have a great system, great coaching, and everything else like that, they don't have as good as offense. They just don't have the guys that can compete on that level. Now, could their defense balance that out? It could make the games closer, but I still think with the Warriors offense, I'm just saying that team is going to get into a routine. And with the Warriors playing at their best level of basketball, they're going to be one of the toughest teams in the NBA to go against. I'm saying that for even the Cavaliers, if you go to the finals or somewhere in the playoffs, if it's the Spurs versus the Warriors are a tough team. They are no joke. People are saying stuff about them or whatever. If you don't acknowledge that the Spurs are not as good offensively, you're just not watching the games. And if you look at the Warriors, their defense is as good as the Spurs or even better. When their defense is at their best, they can compete with any team out there. If you watch that game 1 against the Blazers, I'm saying these guys that were getting the rebounds and the defense and the blocks, and also when you are getting those rebounds and you're going back on your transition offense and you're getting those points too, those are easy buckets usually because you're getting dunks or layups. And sometimes also with the Warriors, they just dish the ball out to the perimeter, so they're getting their perimeter shots also. That's probably one of the toughest teams you can go against in the NBA. So I don't really think any other team is playing as good as basketball as the Warriors right now. Even with the Spurs, you're talking about a Spurs team going against the Grizzlies, and it's no offense to the Spurs. The Spurs can ball, and the Spurs have a great coach and everything, but we're talking about a Spurs team that, yeah, they have a great system, but the Warriors are a very good team offensively to the point where people were saying they were like an all-star team or whatever. But we're talking about guys on that team that are very talented, that can play great team defense and also contribute to the offense at the same time. So you're going to be playing a two-way game where that defense is contributing to the offense like I was saying before. No offense again to the Spurs, but your team is not that versatile like that. You guys got guys that can ball, but it's obvious the reason why the Warriors were the best team in the regular season, and then they continue on into these playoffs. Now they have Durant. If you saw the way Durant was changing the flow to that game against the Blazers, you're going to see when you're rooting for other teams out there that the Warriors are a team that you're going to know are going to be one of the better teams in the playoffs and possibly even win this championship because that's where it's at for them. I thought it was also interesting that game. At halftime, the game was tied. Then you saw the game really changing in the second half. And it wasn't just about Steph Curry or even Klay Thompson. Actually, Klay didn't have his best shooting game in that game. Sometimes when Klay's getting the ball as a catch and shoot, he's not always in his rhythm, so it wasn't the best game for Klay. Although he got some important points throughout the game, not his best. But when you saw Steph shooting the ball and you have Durant getting his points and even with Draymond Green getting his points and also playing great defense, and then you have Clark contributing to the offense, McGee at certain points in time contributing to the offense and defense, these are guys that can change the game. And you know what? When you have someone like Clark again, who's changing the game, I don't think a lot of other teams are ready for that. If you watch those games and you're rooting for the Warriors, it's almost not fair to the other teams when you watch the Warriors, because when the Warriors are at their best, they are the best. So that's what I think about some of these games in the NBA playoffs. I like to know what you guys think. Post your comments down below. Let me know which team you're rooting for, who you think is going to win the NBA championship. And of course, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.